Do you want this?
You know, this week, this filthy sodomite picture is everywhere, and people are showing this transvestite or transgender or whatever this guy is. You know what I'm talking about? Our President Obama is praising him for, or praising her. We don't even know what it is.
This person said, well, I am here because I want to testify to my faith in Christ and be baptized, and a very brief testimony, and then I just baptized Carla. But I was deeply distressed. You came in from the woman's side, you gave a feminine name, but I think you're a man. And then we launched into a discussion about the fact that he had supposedly had a recent sex change operation. I said, you certainly don't for a moment think that the Lord Jesus Christ is going to accept you and sanctify your lifestyle.
Pastor John, what would you say to a young man or a woman who is considering a sex change operation? And
let's suppose the person says, okay, Piper, I listened, and I've always felt that way. This recurring sense of feeling like a gender different from what you are biologically, these desires, this feeling is part of the universal human experience of disordered desire as a result of the fall of man into sin. And we all need a firm grasp of the depth and pervasiveness of sin, lean heavily on the Holy Spirit, and by His power say no to the disordered desires. If you feel like putting on the clothes of a different sex, to imitate the mannerisms or assume the postures or to fantasize as the other sex, Paul says, put that to death by the Spirit.
This bunch of binary, three genders, all this stuff. Hey, folks, that stuff is nonsense. And wickedness, or you're going to send your daughter to public school and some boy, some faggot boy is going to walk in there because he identifies as a girl. It is wickedness. And a Christian should not have any part of it. None. Zero. Period. Don't sit there and just apologize to the world, to planet Earth. Oh, you're such a bigot. Bigot, bigot, bigot. So stupid. Bigot, homophobe. I don't care what you want to call me. It's unnatural. It's filthy. It's wicked.
To be the legislative policy in your area. I don't, but my state is currently headed in that direction. The Alabama Senate on March 2nd passed House Bill 10. If this bill goes into law prescribing gender-affirming treatment of any kind, hormone therapy, puberty blockers, even counseling, will be a felony here in Alabama. In addition, schools will be required to out any gender nonconforming activity observed in the school to the child's parents. Granny is angry. Let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. The legislation that I'm covering in today's video, if passed, would apply only to the state of Alabama. However, similar legislation is currently in the works in other states. According to the Human Rights Campaign, there are currently 175 anti-LGBTQ bills under consideration in 32 states, including 23 that target transgender children. 16 states have introduced bills that would prohibit and in some cases criminalize gender-affirming care for transgender youth, such as puberty-blocking medications and hormones. The Alabama bill is currently getting the most press because it has gone the furthest. It has passed the Alabama Senate, and it is one of the most insidious. After reading the full text of the bill, the most glaring issue is the bill has no stated purpose. The first page has the synopsis, indicating that it would prohibit certain medical procedures, provide for disclosure to parents by schools, and establish criminal penalties for violations. Moving down to the second page, it says, the purpose or effect of this bill would be to require a new or increased expenditure of local funds within the meaning of the amendment. This doesn't tell us the purpose of the bill. At the end of page 2, the act begins, relating to public health to prohibit the performance of a medical procedure or the prescription or issuance of medication upon or to a minor child that is intended to alter the minor child's gender or delay puberty, or to provide for exceptions to provide for disclosure of certain information concerning students to parents by schools, and to establish criminal penalties for violations, and in connection therewith would have as its purpose or effect the requirement of a new or increased expenditure of local funds within the meaning of Amendment 621 of the Constitution of Alabama of 1901, now appearing as Section 111.05 of the official recompilation of the Constitution of Alabama of 1901 as amended. Again, telling us what the bill is intended to do, but for no stated purpose. The rest of the bill also makes no reference to any purpose other than this line at the end with regards to expenditures. The sponsor of the bill, State Senator Shay Shelnutt, on his Facebook page indicates the purpose is to stop the experiments on children in Alabama. What experiments? First, as this article points out, there is no surgery being performed on children to change their sex. This is from alabama.com/news. What is gender dysphoria? Shelnutt said. I looked it up. Okay, at least he did a simple Google search to find out something about what he wanted to pass legislation on. According to the Mayo Clinic, it's a feeling of discomfort or distress that might occur in people who have gender identify different from their sex at birth. I don't know if the article has a typo there or if the state senator has a problem with reading the definition or with speaking the correct grammar. Considering that our Senator Tommy Tuberville can't read when it's raining, it could easily be any or all of those. Another definition is a term that describes a sense of unease that a person may have whose gender identity differs from their birth sex. My definition: someone thinks they should be a girl if they're a boy, or thinks they should be a boy if they're a girl, Shelnutt said. So if we have a medical definition of a medical condition, but Shelnutt, who has no medical training, thinks that he has the knowledge and experience to tell the Mayo Clinic that they don't know what this medical condition is, but he knows. He will tell them how to practice medicine because he knows better than they do. Why does he think that he knows better? The article doesn't say, and I doubt Shelnutt would ever say it because the only possible reason is it offends his religious views. But can't he practice his religion and leave the rest of us that don't believe in his religion out of it? He wants to legislate his religious views into law, forcing his religion on all of us. Shelnutt says, science shows that children that are going through this gender dysphoria, most of them mature or grow out of this stage if they are given the chance. So why is this bill needed? It's just to stop these surgeries and these drugs on our children. It's to protect our children. That's my simple explanation. But is Shelnutt right? Is the science on his side? The article goes on to say parents and advocates lobbied against the bill at a state house rally today. The Alabama chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics opposes the bill. In a position statement, the organization said surgeries are not done on minors, and that puberty blockers and hormones are used as part of an evidence-based standard of care. If Shelnutt has evidence that most children outgrow gender dysphoria, it's just a stage, as he claims. Let him share this with the scientific community. Obviously, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Mayo Clinic need this evidence that you have, Mr. Shelnutt. Please share it with the world. How much study has Shelnutt put into this? He says he was not aware of the issue until the bill was presented to him more than a year ago. I didn't think that this was going on in Alabama. Had no idea, Shelnutt said. I've been educated since then. Apparently not enough. I just think it's wrong for this to happen to children. Children aren't mature enough to make this decision on surgeries and drugs. The whole point is to protect kids. Shelnutt said that he was not aware of any transgender surgeries happening in Alabama, but he wanted to make sure that none did. So Shelnutt didn't even know about medical treatment for transgender children until a year ago, but somehow he just knows that this is wrong and we need to prevent it. I have to wonder if he wants to outlaw all medical treatment that he doesn't understand, or only medical treatment that he thinks might go against his religion. The same article goes on. Senator Tom Whatley, Republican from Auburn, proposed an amendment to say that it would not prohibit or limit psychologists or professional counselors from doing their jobs. The Senate rejected the amendment at Shelnutt's request. This bill would make it a Class C felony, punishable by up to 10 years in prison for medical professionals to provide gender-affirming medical treatment for the purpose of attempting to alter the appearance of or affirm the minor's perception of his or her gender or sex, if that perception is inconsistent with the minor's sex as defined in this act. Which means that if this bill passes and a child goes to a mental health professional with gender dysphoria, the psychologist, therapist, or other counselor may not say anything to affirm the child's feelings without becoming guilty of committing a felony. Shelnutt said he wants children with gender dysphoria to get help, but not be counseled in a way that affirms their gender identity conflict. So what does he want? Does he seriously want mental health professionals to say, it's not real? It seems so. As he says, there's no medical diagnosis, Shelnutt says. There's no medical condition that these kids have. It's just in their mind. Gender dysphoria is a mental health issue, and it is a medical diagnosis, just like depression or any other mental health issue. It is just in their mind. That's what a mental health issue is, an issue of the mind. Shelnutt's dismissal of gender dysphoria with the statement, there's no medical condition, it's just in their mind, would apply to any mental health issue. Is he wanting to outlaw all mental health treatment? My point here isn't fear-mongering. I'm not trying to make a slippery slope argument. Rather, I'm pointing out that there is no basis for Shelnutt's wanting to ban mental health counseling for transgender youth. The reason he states that he's against mental health counseling of transgender youth is because it's all in their mind, and that applies to all mental health counseling. If that was in fact his reason for being against counseling for transgender youth, to be consistent, he would have to be opposed to all mental health counseling, period. Additionally, the bill also includes pharmacists. They are guilty of a felony if they fill a prescription for hormones if the hormones are for the purpose of attempting to alter the appearance of or affirm the minor's perception of his or her gender or sex, if that perception is inconsistent with the minor's sex. So if a pharmacist gets a prescription for puberty blockers, they will now need to ask if the prescription is for gender-altering or affirming purposes. There are other purposes for puberty blockers, so it cannot be assumed that this is the reason for the prescription. Alabama youth cannot travel out of state and get a prescription in return. But worse, if a youth who is already on puberty blockers travels to Alabama, they can't get a refill on their lawfully prescribed medication within the borders of this state. Another potentially tragic situation that this bill could cause is interrupting the medication of adult patients. In Alabama, the age of majority is 19, not 18 like most states. An 18-year-old can get sex reassignment surgery in one state or be on hormone therapy and come to Alabama, and suddenly continuing their medical care is now illegal. One Alabama state senator is a pharmacist and recognized the potential problems with this bill. Unfortunately, this senator was in the minority in voting against it. One point that I would like to clarify is many of the news media are saying that the law would apply to youth age 19 and under, but this is inaccurate. The bill defines minor as having the same meaning as in Section 43-8-1 of the Code of Alabama of 1975, which is actually part of the probate code. And as you see here, the statute specifies a minor is one who is under the age of 19. So unlike what some of the media is reporting, this law does not affect 19-year-olds. but it does affect youth 18 and under. I looked to see what Yellowhammer News had to say about this bill. Yellowhammer News is a very conservative, but not ultra-conservative news source for Alabama news. They are considered generally factual. They quote Shelnutt as saying, "The primary concern here is the health and well-being of Alabama's children," stated Shelnutt. "We must protect vulnerable minors who do not have the mental capacity to make life-altering decisions of this caliber. The efficacy and effects of these particular surgeries and methods of treatment are not well sustained by medical evidence, and actions of this severity cannot be undone." Shelnutt is obviously being careful not to state that his purpose is in any way related to religion. However, if he really was concerned about children being able to wait until adulthood to make life-altering decisions, then puberty blockers are actually the best option. Puberty blockers allow a transgender child to put off puberty until they are ready to decide if they want to go through puberty for their birth sex or not. Puberty blockers do not alter a child's body. Rather, they prevent nature from altering the child's body for them. If a child on puberty blockers ultimately decides that they want to go through puberty for their birth sex, they need only stop taking the puberty blockers, and then they're just seen as a late bloomer. If Shelnutt was really concerned about allowing children to put off the decision of what gender they want to be until adulthood, as he claims, then he should be promoting puberty blockers, not banning them, as the entire purpose of puberty blocker therapy is to put off puberty until a child is ready to make such a decision. Shelnutt makes the claim that the efficacy and effects of sex change surgery is not well sustained by medical evidence. He's partly right. No one is doing sex reassignment surgery on children, so of course there's no evidence that it works, because it isn't even a suggestion. Making a law to prohibit a surgery that no one is doing makes as much sense as prohibiting the sale of cars on Jupiter. Selling cars on Jupiter would be unhealthy because there's no breathable atmosphere there. True, but no one's trying to sell cars on Jupiter either. And no one is trying to do sex reassignment surgery on children. Taking away mental health counseling and puberty blockers from children in order to prevent someone from performing a surgery that no one is trying to do or even proposing to do is far more lacking in efficacy than leaving the healthcare system alone. I found nowhere that Shelnutt produced any evidence that healthcare for children will be improved or be more efficient or be more beneficial by taking away mental health care and prescription medication from children. I believe it is our responsibility as lawmakers to do all we can to keep our children out of harm's way, he added. Protecting minors from these powerful drugs and consequential procedures will help ensure that they do not feel responsible to make a decision they may wish later to undo, ultimately causing more harm, says Shelnutt. Except instead of protecting children from life-altering choices, he's actually making the choice for them. Worse yet, you are cutting off any mental health services that are currently available to help children to deal with these very real medical issues. Until we can vote this nut out of office, we are stuck with him. The second half of the bill is just as bad, although I don't think it could possibly stand as law. It would be void for vagueness. Here is what it says. Section 4. No nurse, counselor, teacher, principal, or other administrative official at a public or private school attended by a minor shall do either of the following. 1. Encourage or coerce a minor to withhold from the minor's parents or legal guardian the fact that the minor's perception of his or her gender or sex is inconsistent with the minor's sex. 2. Withhold from a minor's parent or legal guardian information related to a minor's perception that his or her gender or sex is inconsistent with his or her sex. In other words, schools will be required to out any student expressing that they might perceive themselves as transgender. So first, if a child tells his school counselor that he feels like a girl sometimes, The counselor must tell the parents. So much for confidentiality. School counselors are now going to have to tell kids, anything you say to me is completely confidential, unless you tell me that you are transgender. Then I have to tell your parents. So don't tell me if you're transgender, because then you lose any right that you might have had to confidentiality. Why has the law singled out schools? It doesn't put this duty on counselors outside of schools. Other counselors are prohibited from affirming the child's gender issues, but they aren't required to tell the parents. Second, the penalty for failure to reveal this information is a felony, most likely. The law as written is a bit ambiguous on this point. It states that it intends to provide penalties for violations, but the only penalty for violating this law, making it a Class C felony, comes before the section on school reporting requirements. So, do the school reporting requirements fall under the same penalty? The law as written is unclear. Assuming the felony penalty applies to this section of the law, to avoid committing a felony, teachers, nurses, administrators will need to report to parents any behavior that they observe that could be construed as the child's perception of his gender being inconsistent with his or her sex. So if a 5-year-old girl says that she has a penis and the teacher hears this, the teacher has committed a felony if he doesn't tell the girl's parents. It doesn't matter that she might not even know what a penis is and may only have said it because she thought the word sounded funny. You see how far this law could be taken. And this is why I say it would be void for vagueness. A law can be declared by a court to be void for vagueness if from reading the law you can't tell what behavior the law prohibits. Commonly, vagrancy laws are found to be void for vagueness, as they are sometimes so broad that just waiting for a bus at the bus stop could fit within the law. This is exactly the case here. If a boy wears a girl's hat to school, is that information related to a minor's perception that his or her gender or sex is inconsistent with his or her sex? How about a comment that a girl makes in school that boys are lucky because society favors men over women in corporate promotions? What if a girl says that a boy is hot? Could that be an indication that she wants to be that boy? While that is a bit of an extreme example, I remind you that the wording of the law is that the minor's perception is that his or her gender is inconsistent with his or her sex. What exactly does a child do or say that reveals his perception? Not only is this law so vague that no one could possibly know if they have violated it, as they could easily misread a child's perception from the child's behavior, I remind you that a violation of this law is a felony, which means to avoid being guilty, people will have to err on the side of over-reporting. I think this is a very important issue that is not going to go away soon. I would like to do a live stream on this issue, and I would like to have a doctor or other medical professional from Alabama that would have some figures on how many children this law is going to impact. If this is your area of expertise or you know someone in this area, please leave a comment below and a way for me to contact you. Or contact me on Twitter so I can get this panel together on this issue. But fear not, Granny will not send you away empty-handed, not knowing what to do if you work at a school and this law does get passed, because I do have a suggestion that will keep you on the legal side and out of trouble. If you are a nurse, counselor, teacher, principal, or other administrative official at a public or private school attended by a minor, send every child home every day with a note to their parents that looks just like this. Dear parent, at some point in the day, your child may or may not have said something or done something to indicate that they might perceive their gender differs from their sex. Live your life.